Well, hello, everybody. My name is Madame De Fer. You are on the Rabotat Records YouTube page, and you are watching my new series, Well, That's Weird. I've had this idea to create this series now for a few years. I grew up watching a ton of movies, a lot of really good stuff, but a lot of really weird stuff. Thanks, Dad. So in honor of all the weird movies, all the camp, all the films that might never make it to a movie review on YouTube, that's where I come in, and I'm going to deliver the goods.
What you are about to witness is an odd show made for odd humans.
So the first video in my series is going to be dedicated to Wendigo movies, in honor of my single Wendigo, which came out in October 2024. There's something out there. Now you might be thinking, Madam, what the hell is a Wendigo? If you don't know what a Wendigo is, let our friends over at Britannica explain it a little more. The Wendigo is a mythological creature, a cannibalistic monster in the spiritual tradition of North American Algonquin-speaking tribes. It is associated with winter and described as either a fearsome beast that stalks and eats humans, or as a spirit that possesses humans, causing them to turn into cannibals. And the great thing about the two movies I'm going to discuss today, while both weird, actually cover each one of those styles of Wendigo. A Wendigo already fully formed, and a Wendigo who finds a human to possess. So let's jump into the first movie, which is going to be Antlers from 2021. Directed by Scott Cooper and starring Kerry Russell, Jesse Plemons, and Jeremy T. Thomas, the story follows a school teacher on her path to discovering what's going on in a student's home when she suspects that there's abuse. Little does she know that her student is actually harboring a secret in the attic, and it's growing horns. Now, before I spoil these movies, which, mind you, I'm going to spoil movies on this series. So if you don't want to know about them, skip past, move on, and once you've watched the films, come back here and tell me what you thought in the comments. This movie is based on the short story The Quiet Boy, written by Nick Antosca, who actually was a producer for the film Antlers. And the original story is drastically built upon in the film to not only include Wendigos, but to further the abuse storyline, to bring it into a grounded reality in the specific location that we are talking about. This story takes place in Sippas Falls, Oregon, and follows character Frank Weaver right in the beginning of the film as he's cooking meth in an abandoned mine in the town. And the town itself is very obviously having a reckoning with the opioid epidemic. He has his son Aiden outside, but he does not want him to come in. And through the process of that intro, you get introduced in the most alien way possible to the Wendigo. You don't really see the Wendigo until later in the film, but the setup is that the Wendigo itself in that opening scene possesses Frank Weaver. And this kicks off this bigger story where Lucas Weaver, the son that wasn't brought with Frank to the meth lab, is left by himself, left to his own devices, and Kerry Russell, as his teacher, is very, very concerned. There's a backstory with her experiencing abuse with her household. Her brother is Jesse Plemons. He is the sheriff in town. He never left where she did after they were abused by their father. And they use the abuse storyline with those two to interweave into the Frank Weaver, Lucas Weaver story. And I think that was the hardest thing for people watching this movie to kind of digest. This film could have done a lot more by pulling away from that subtext just a little bit. And what's interesting is in The Quiet Boy, the short story, there is the alludement to drug use and to abuse and all these things going on, but it's not directed specifically at the opioid epidemic. And I think for a lot of people who are directly affected by that, even today, that's going to be a hard thing to want to watch in this film. But outside of that, I think there are a lot of really cool things about this movie that are worth talking about and worth exploring. And I really do think in my core of cores that this is one of the better Wendigo movies that has ever been created in service of the Wendigo itself. So as the movie progresses, Kerry Russell is worried about Lucas Weaver. He is wearing dirty clothes to school. He's killing animals, and she's following him. And as she gets closer to the situation and closer to him, again, guided by her own abuse as a child and knowing that something wrong is happening here, she basically discovers towards the end of the film that not only has Frank Weaver been possessed by a Wendigo, but he is turning into one rapidly. And Aiden has also been affected by the Wendigo, where he himself is also possessed. The movie progresses, and you just feel so deeply for Lucas, who is trying to keep his family together, furthering that metaphor of the drug abuse angle affecting his family. He keeps his brother and his dad locked up in the attic, and by the time the transformation takes place, we're too far gone and things have gotten out of control, and nobody other than Carrie Russell, in the grand scheme of things, thinks she can stop it. That doesn't happen. The Wendigo itself is a creature that is constantly starving, constantly looking for its next host, constantly looking for that next meal. And I think that that's what the movie does so beautifully, is that it leans into the lore in a way that I appreciated. I just felt that there was so much of it that is grounded in the true myth behind the monster. I have nothing but amazing things to say about the appearance of the Wendigo, how even the transformations of the Wendigo from human to creature take place. I think all that was cool. I had no issues with that. I have a little bit of issue with some of the glowing little orbs of CGI light that happened towards the end of the film. But again, I think that given the budget and given the circumstance, I think that it's fine. And I can absolutely look past that. What I can't look past is really, really bad dialogue. And there are moments in this film where I felt like I was watching an 𝘗𝗵𝘁'𝘀 movie and thinking to myself, who wrote this terrible line? This is definitely not from the short story. Again, I give credit to the screenwriters because I think overall the story itself is fairly sound. My big problem is that sometimes the lines are so out of place and sound so silly. You know, I guess like hearkening back to like old monster movies, it really does sound like that. And so for that, overlook it a little bit. I'm not going to be mad about it. Another thing I really want to discuss that I don't want to overlook, especially from a music background, is that the music in this movie is amazing. It starts so slow and brooding with the piano element, and I love the motif that they created for the film. As things escalate and get more intense, the music drives up, and I think that using music is one of the best elements that a filmmaker can do to ground a film in a feeling, in a moment. But this movie in particular doesn't use it to instigate scares or do it to instigate like anything other than an intense, depressing feeling of foreboding and heartbreak. So again, for me, I really liked this film. I like the way it develops. I love the Wendigo at the end of the film. Considering the original story wasn't necessarily a Wendigo story per se, they did a really good job with the lore. They did a really good job of showing the possession of a Wendigo. I guess another kind of stinky part about this film is the Native American experience in it. So they stem from Algonquin speaking Native American tribes, especially up in the Northeast. Their tie-in to the Native American element is one Native American actor who basically gives an exposition dump towards the end of the film of what a Wendigo is. I still really appreciate that they did have the Native American voice in the film, because if they didn't, it wouldn't have spoken to the true origins of where the Wendigo myth even comes from. Last but not least, my favorite element of Antlers had to be the actual Wendigo construction by the end of the film. What I loved so much is that in Wendigo myth, there is the element that sometimes the Wendigo itself will be wearing a human face to basically confuse its prey into thinking that it is a real human rather than a creature, a cannibalistic creature, mind you, that will eat you. So what's super cool about this film, oh my God, is when you finally see that Wendigo, it's wearing Frank Weaver's face. I can't tell you enough how cool that was to see. Again, knowing Wendigo lore, I was so thrilled by that. It was so easy to not have a human face on a Wendigo. Let's be real. Why do we need that? Who wants that? I wanted that. And Antlers delivered that. I really, really enjoyed this film. Is it the best Wendigo film you're ever going to see? Hopefully not, but does it stand as one of the better Wendigo films that exist right now? Absolutely. If you are interested in Wendigo lore and the actual like deep-seated nature of where the Wendigos come from. And if you're okay digesting the subplot that involves abuse, I really do recommend this film. And on the weirdness scale, this film definitely falls in I've seen weirder. So I would highly recommend you go check out Antlers, especially if you're looking for something grounded in the more traditional mythological background of the Wendigo. So are you looking for a film that might not be as grounded in Wendigo mythology and maybe more grounded in complete schlock? Then strap in for 1995's Frostbiter, Wrath of the Wendigo. This film was directed by Tom Chaney, starring Ron Ashton, Laurie Baker, and Patrick Butter. A duo of gun-happy redneck hunters stupidly break a sacred circle in a hunting spree, which releases the deadly Wendigo. The Wendigo kills many of the hunters gruesomely, leaving the chosen woman and a gun-toting idiot to destroy the deadly beast. It's basically what that is. I literally don't know how better to summarize other than that synopsis. And I think for those of you who know film, and specifically horror film, it will not shock you to hear that this is a trauma film. I'm going to tell you right now that trauma films are not for everybody, and that is absolutely okay. If you are not into complete camp, complete schlock, complete fantasy, don't watch Frostbiter. Go watch Antlers. Antlers is going to be great. Frostbiter is going to make you question your faith in me and in this series, so bear with me. This is a very fun, very, very low budget film. It starts with two hunters who are shooting off, being super ignorant, being dumb, and they end up at this guy's cabin. And in the beginning of the film, they set up that this man who lives in this cabin made a deal with the Wendigo who lives in the area many, many years ago to keep the peace. He basically has these offerings of heads that he keeps around the cabin in order to keep the Wendigo happy and at bay. But these dumb hunters don't know that. Even a little bit. Don't even assume. Why would you? So the hunters show up at this guy's cabin, and in a stupid fit of rage, one of them murders this guy. And the Wendigo curse has now been unleashed onto not only these guys, but a group of hunters in a cabin nearby, and a woman in a completely different area that gets possessed in order to go fight the Wendigo. She gets called on as the chosen one. That is basically the premise of the film. Everybody is trying to stop this Wendigo. Everybody's trying to make sure that the sacrifice established at the cabin stays intact and that the Wendigo completely stays under wraps. On that note, it's pretty low quality. The writing is really bad. You want something grounded in reality? This is not the film for you. But I will say, from a complete schlock standpoint, all the characters are doing their damnedest to be just so dumb, so ignorant. The only person who really isn't like this is Laurie Baker's character as the chosen one. Once the Wendigo curse is unleashed, a spirit shows up at the chosen one's house and basically lets her know in a dream, you're the one who needs to stop this. You need to make sure the circle isn't broken, and you need to establish the sanctity again in this area. So she is on a long journey to get to the Wendigo and to get to the cabin. She really isn't involved for most of this, except you get these glimpses of her just like making her way through the hero's journey. We gotta love that for her. Love a good, strong female character. Now the guys, on the other hand, they are all just plot devices for death. I don't know how else to explain that other than there is no other reason for them to exist other than to spit stupid lines and to die. And these men don't catch a break for the whole movie. It starts with the two hunters in the beginning that instigate this whole thing. And one of those guys dies pretty quickly, which leaves the other guy at the disposal of the Wendigo to do whatever this creature would like. So this guy shows up at another cabin and basically condemns all the other men in that cabin to a terrible Wendigo death. And it's very unfortunate. But there are a few very fortunate things in this movie that I think are worth mentioning. The Wendigo in this story is not possessing humans. He is strictly out to kill humans, which we're all for. That's fine. All good. And without really having to get into it too much or spoil any more of the story, it's just a schlock fest. The one thing I would like to mention that I think is in and of itself a reason to watch this movie is the chilly song and the chilly scenes. there is a predominant feature of the film where there is chili being cooked and a Prince-like song that is dedicated to chili. It's pretty great. And they definitely sampled Kiss from Prince, and whether they cleared that sample or not, I'm not going to tell. But what is amazing is that a song like this even exists in a Wendigo film.
Want some of my bodacious chili? Well, we can't do anything till morning. I don't understand all this business about the Wendigo.
The Wendigo also has minions. I don't know why, but he does, because he's got to have somebody do his bidding. So the minions will show up during the chili scene. I cannot say enough about that scene alone. That scene alone is worth watching the movie just to watch how dumb and ridiculous this plays out. Ultimately, at the end of the day, they conquer the Wendigo. The chosen one puts the circle back together and the Wendigo is put to peace. And all is said and done, it's all good. One thing I will say about the Wendigo in this film is the stop motion nature of the effects of creating the Wendigo is just beautiful. I love creative choices in films like this, especially when given a very, very small budget. And I think they did a very, very good job with the stop motion Wendigo, making it look as foreboding as possible. The other great thing about this film, a lot of reliance on minis, miniatures. I am a big sucker for that in film, and a lot of this very much so feels like Trauma. So that alone is very, very cool if you're a fan of very, very schlocky films and Trauma itself. Now, one thing that I had a very, very hard time with, and if we harken back to Antlers, we spoke about the Native American influence on that film, which actually featured a Native American actor. In this film, it's a bit more offensive. They are using flute throughout the whole soundtrack. That is just about as Native American as it gets. Otherwise, this is sheerly a dead snow for Wendigos. So kudos to the guys who did Frostbiter, because given the resources they had at Trauma, I think they did a fun job with it, and it's very, very hard to come by. You can go watch it on Tubi. If you have the ability to go check it out, I would. It's really, really easy to watch. It's short, and if you're just looking for a schlock fest, please have at it. This is the movie for you. Definitely not a high quality, high grade film, but a good film. Very enjoyable. For this film, on the weird scale, we are looking at a, well, that was super weird. And with that, we conclude the first episode, the Wendigo episode of Well, That's Weird. And if you've seen either of these two movies, go ahead and comment below and let me know what you thought of them. I think that they are both very fun films for completely different reasons, but I'd be very curious to hear your opinion, especially Frostbiter. I would be so interested to get your thoughts on the chili scene alone. So thank you again. My name is Madame De Fer, and well, that was weird.